Good afternoon, Eswatini. Here we are on day 2 of the cold drizzle in Babane. But let me ask you, can even the chill of the grey skies dampen the fire of ambition? Certainly not. And today on Market View, we are proving exactly that. Live from our Hospital Hill studios, it's 2 p.m. Central African time, and we're going to explore the powerful role that quality standards play in opening doors for Eswatini's businesses to compete on the global stage. Our very capable business journalist, Nelsiwe Ndlangamandla, will sit down with Phindile Dlamini, who is the Director of the Regulatory and Quality Infrastructure Development Department. They're going to uncover how precision and coordination in production, sound like a rapper there, could unlock untapped export potential. Later on the show, Sanele Sibia joins us to dissect today's market movements, because while the weather may be cold, the markets are alive with energy. Let's start the show by looking at today's business news. For our very first story, the Directorate of Industrial, Vocational and Training, which is a department under the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, has been mandated by government to assess individuals who have a competence in a particular occupation but do not have formal qualification. The Director, Ernest Simelane, says they do trade testing, which is very, very critical in informing foreign direct investors of the skills that Eswatini has.
This work is so important because there are so many people who acquire skills differently, but without certification, they're not able to access the labor market. You will know that even if you are self-employed, for you to apply for a tender, you need certification. You will know that also if you want to look for a job, you need certification. You will also know that as for the country, for us as a country to attract FDIs, which is foreign direct investors, we need to account for the skills that we have in the country. So you can never account for a skill that is not certified. So it's very, very important for the economic growth of the country. And most importantly, because we also focus on vocational skills, you know that economy is made through our hands. We need to work in order to boost the economy. So we rate this work that we do very, very important. And most importantly, we also rate ourselves that we are a bridge between education and training, as well as the labor market, because we stand right in the middle of employability to assist a Maswati to get employed, whether self-employed or industrial employment. We have not been able to enlist all the people that we have trade tested, though we can enlist them because we have a database here where we have all the people who have been trade tested from the 1980s, because people come here to look for duplicate certificates. Then we have to go to the records to check if a person was indeed trade tested. But then we can actually account the work that we do year in and year out. For an example, last year we trade tested more than 1,500 people. Not saying that they all passed, but 80% of those people passed. We usually say our people are successful because a lot of these people who we test are people who are already working, but they are not at a level where they can boost their work rate. Like for instance, if you have been tested in grade 3 and you go to test for grade 2, we are sure that then you can also apply for industrial employment.
Staff members at the Meteorology Department, which deals with weights and measures at the Ministry of Commerce and Trade, have been trained on measurements in different aspects of standards which will ensure customers' satisfaction. Now, Janine Jansen van Vuren, the consultant engaged to the training, says the consumers will get value for their money.
What we try to do is get some of the guys here from industry as well as from the local government standards organizations to help people understand what metrology is. There's a famous saying to say that to measure is to know. And today in our industry and our world, it's all about how do we know what we measure is correct. So we are training the guys and showing them how they can create systems and standards in order to help industry to know what they are measuring. If you don't know what you are measuring, you might be selling too much or too little. So that is how it impacts on the general public. The public might get more than they're paying for, which is not good for the industry. But on the other hand, the public might get less than what they're paying for, which is not good to the public. And that is the importance of that. The other important thing is that once you know what you measure, it also helps you with exporting and doing business with the rest of the world.
Chief Inspector at Metrology explains why they needed the training.
Our scope is increasing. In the past, we were just only focusing on 3 parameters, which was length, mass, and volume. But now we want to increase to pressure, to temperature, as well as to electricity. So now the guys that side, they are just training us, equipping us, so that when we increase our scope, we are capacitated.
Part of the work done by Metrology Department is to ensure that the weight for products sold to the consumers is of the standard recommended by the government of Eswatini. For Market View, Nelson Dlangamandla, Vuminkosi Nzinisa, Matsapa.
It's just gone 6 minutes after 2. You have stayed with us. Stay with us. We'll be back with our Enterprise Watch.
Be sure to catch Business Watch every Wednesday between 2 p.m. to 3 p.m., where we feature the latest updates on business news, market trends, and exclusive interviews with industry leaders, as well as insights on emerging small and medium enterprises in the commercial sector. Business Watch, your business leader.
Welcome back. This is our Enterprise Watch. Standards and quality play a critical role in determining products that can be exported by a country. The Director of the Regulatory and Quality Infrastructure Development Department at the Ministry of Commerce, Industry and Trade, which is Phindile Dlamini, says they always urge local businesses to implement quality standards, which in turn ensures that all aspects of the manufacturing and production process are well coordinated to increase their chances of exporting. Business journalist Nelson Dlangamandla sits down with the director for a detailed discussion on the work that is done by the department.
To the program director, for the benefit of someone who will be seeing you for the first time, can you briefly highlight what your department does?
Our main mandate is to assist the Kingdom of Eswatini in providing support institutions that support products and services for trade. The department is tasked with providing an enabling field for industry to be able to produce. And the enabling field that we produce or that we provide for industry is basically the development of a quality infrastructure.
Very, very interesting work that you are doing, Director, but what is the level of understanding and compliance on the quality and standards, especially from the different stakeholders that you are working with, and as well as the public?
The level of understanding would really vary with our different stakeholders. First of all, our stakeholders, they would include the general public. They form part of our stakeholders. Then we have industry, both large and MSMEs. The level, again, as I've said, would differ to who you are talking to. With the large industry, basically those that are even exporting and doing mass production, they are fully aware of the quality requirements, and most are complying. Most are using standards to develop their product, because it becomes a requirement for their customers really to adhere to quality standards and also the quality principles that we may be offering as a department. the general stakeholder, I think, which is the general public, so to speak, we are not yet there in other aspects. I believe a good sign of a general public that is fully aware of quality and what needs to be attained for them to say a product is of quality is usually attested in their buying positions. How do people go to procure? We are still seeing a number of issues around our buying patterns. We, as a Maswati, we would want to buy something that comes cheap without even looking at whether it conforms to any standard. That speaks back to the ministry to say that we still need to work on our quality culture as a Maswati, and many others. We are seeing a number of mushrooming shops and products that come from, maybe are being imported from other countries, and we can always see a Maswati running to buy those without even a quality certificate to say that the product works well. A good example is charging cables for our phones. I don't know how many you would have in your room, but I have quite a number. I don't know why I would always buy, but the best thing to always look for when you are buying these products is to look for a product that has been certified to say it conforms to a particular standard, so that you get the value for the money that you have. MSMEs, on the other hand, is another sector of our stakeholders. It would differ really on what they are doing. We have sustainable MSMEs that are fully aware of issues of quality standards. I think even in our annual program, that is the Eswatini Quality Awards, we have seen MSMEs emerging as winners to say that they are fully aware. And then we have the other part of MSMEs which are really not aware of the quality standards that need to be adhered to. The difference between the two, those that are aware and those that are not aware, is sustainability of the SMME or of the company itself, or entrepreneurial activity.
Speaking of products, Director, that are mushrooming, do you have any sort of control over the products that are imported to Eswatini, those that do not maybe adhere to the standards? Are there any types of screening maybe at the border posts, at the border gates, just to say these products should not be allowed in Eswatini?
It's very limited in terms of control as a quality department or as a ministry, because as I have said earlier on, the mandate to regulate lies with the different regulatory departments and agencies. If you are talking about building materials, they are regulators for building materials, which may include the Ministry of Public Works and Construction, which may include the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development. So we completely rely on those to make sure that they develop technical regulations. Technical regulations, again, there would be internal laws for Eswatini to say what do we want in our market and what we do not want. The journey has begun, though. We are working with a number of the regulatory departments now to start developing. Some have already started developing the technical regulations that would make sure that we have a market that is clean in terms of the products that we found. It's not only an issue of quality, it is also an issue of safety, because some of the products that may be getting through our borders may not be safe for our consumers. So it's a journey that we have begun, and we believe that together with the cooperation from the regulatory departments and agencies, we are going to reach a stage where we are able to screen even things that are entering into our port of entries. I think we have the Energy Regulatory Authority they are developing a number of regulations, of technical regulations that would help us to screen electrical equipments that are getting entry into our port of entries. So we have issues of energy saving bulbs, and we believe that once that regulation come into force, then we would be able, the same would apply to the food sector. We have the Ministry of Health. We also have a number of pipeline programs or even technical regulations that have been proposed to make sure that we protect the consumers.
There are different agreements that the country has signed or has entered into. We have the African Continental Free Trade Area, we have AGOA, and the SADC EU Economic Development Agreement. How are our local small and medium enterprises capacitated for these businesses, especially in terms of quality? Are we ready to export? Is Eswatini small and medium enterprises ready to export under these agreements?
With the SMMEs, really, as I have said, that there are those that are adhering to quality standards and those that are not. But I think the government of the Kingdom of Eswatini has found it also beneficial to also work with other agencies. Like we have our National Standards Board. They are currently working on a certification program. Basically, a certification program would be a program that would look at a product that is produced by an SMME, test it with minimum requirements, but not on the safe side, make sure that it's still safe, and give it a certification. I think SWASA will soon unveil that program, and that in itself, it's an initiative that would make sure that an SMME is given an opportunity to sell his or her things in our local markets and further grow in terms of meeting the standards for that a particular product to a stage where the product qualifies to be exported.
I find the work that you are doing, Director, to be very, very critical because it allows us as consumers to get value for our money. But I just want to know, most government departments always complain that we do not have staff, so sometimes we are not able to fulfill our duties as a department. Do you have the capacity to do your duties well?
The issue of capacity is very interesting. I mean, personally, even on my own resources and capacity, I would never say I have enough. We would love to have more. There are a number of positions, additional positions really, that we have proposed and have been approved. And we believe that with the support from government going forward, we are going to have almost sufficient, if I may say, personnel to do the work. But as we speak, we are waiting for the Ministry of Public Service to slowly unpack or even not even unpack, but allow us to recruit to fill some of those positions. But we do have people on the ground. They may never be enough because our activities cover the national.
This has been a very, very insightful conversation with you, Director. We understand that quality is an integral part of every industry, and for the businesses in Eswatini to be able to take advantage of the different trade agreements, they have to adhere to quality. Let's hope you will continue to help Emaswati, even the small and medium enterprises, as they navigate the space.
Yeah, quality standards, certainly important. What a frank and insightful conversation there by our business journalist, Nelson Ndlangamandla and Mage Pindile Dlamini. We're going to shift gears into the markets after the break. Stay with us.
ujala masoda amahle kunathi lesa
sabatandi ukuthi njengaloku
Sibile sive sithi khulumeni.
Thank you for staying with us. Our last segment of the show is the market analysis, and as we shift gears into that, let's take a moment to maybe reflect on yesterday's performance. We saw a significant drop across the United States indices, with the Nasdaq and S&P 500 bearing the brunt of tech sell-offs. Yet European markets held their ground, and our local markets remained steady, a calm amidst the global storm. But markets, as we know, are ever-changing, and today has brought fresh winds. To guide us through the ebb and flow, today's numbers is Sunny Lesbia, per usual, who joins us in studio for the second time this week to break down the key movers as well as the shakers across global and local indices. A very good afternoon to you, Sunny, and welcome to the program. I'm just thinking, as we anticipate the Trump and Kamala Harris today, in fact tonight, the whole world is groaning in anticipation. And as you know, the saying, the US sneezes, the whole world catches the cold. And that is exactly where I want us to start off. I could be preempting that it's going to affect today's numbers. And in fact, I would suppose maybe tomorrow's numbers. Seeing a solid rebound in the US indices today, Nasdaq and S&P 500 both in the green. And that's a juxtaposition really if you look at yesterday, because we did see sharp drops yesterday. The question, what's behind this recovery?
So what we are seeing, good afternoon, Mr. Ngumale, and good afternoon to the viewer. So what we are seeing in terms of the numbers, if you look across the US, we're seeing the markets have actually almost regained the losses that we saw on Friday. So, we saw around 490 in terms of the Nasdaq, in terms of the losses, but we see that when you look at it today, it has gained relatively the same amount it lost, So what we are seeing happening there is Friday, it was the markets responding to the non-farm payroll data that came out on Friday. Just signaling that, the U.S. economy added 162 jobs instead of the expected 180-something jobs. So that shows that those are the signs of a weakening economy or a slowing economy, which then really just brings us to think and really just take a step back and ask whether we're not too late to come into the part with the interest rate story. So that's what we are seeing happening today. And the markets are still a bit cautious and still looking forward, but we've seen that rebound coming back into the story. But we should expect a bit of some cautiousness as we traverse through the weekend. We get more inflation data to come out this week to really just signal how much of the interest rate cut we should expect on the 18th of September, which is sometime next week.
All right, maybe a simple yes or no answer here. Indeed, the whole world is groaning in anticipation. The Trump-Kamala Harris debate set to happen tonight, less than 2 months before the election takes place. Is that in any way fitting into today's indices, or maybe that's a conversation for tomorrow?
It is. If you look at the futures markets, they are actually showing signs of a bit of a slowing down. That conversation is actually going to play into it. But right now, the market is really looking into the interest rate story. So probably after the 18th, then the elections are going to start being a major factor in the markets.
Really interested in seeing how that, unfolds. But let's go over in Europe. It's a bit of a mixed story today with the FTSE 100 dipping, but other markets like the CAC 40 staying positive. What factors are influencing these divergent trends across the region?
So what we are seeing in Europe is expecting, further data to come out, especially in the UK. We're expecting GDP data to come out tomorrow. And if you take a step back and look at the past 2 months, we saw a bit of stagnation in London and the UK overall in terms of the GDP growth. And if you're looking into Germany, what we are seeing there is, there's some issues around the growth and stagnation within Germany. And also right now, the main issue that we are looking into is actually the that issue of value creation. You know,
Yeah.
Germany is losing its edge in terms of value creation across the board, and you know, awaiting more data to come in this week. So markets are also coming in cautious, and also the US factor comes into play here. But we are still seeing some recovery in Paris because, you know, after the elections, Paris did lose some ground. So we do expect it to normalize and, you know, get on that correction path.
Yeah. I want us to look into the Asian markets. They seem to have had quite the quieter session, so to speak. Modest gains and losses. Hang Seng index in particular saw a slight uptick, as we can see right here on the numbers. What are the key forces play in Asia right now?
So Asia, it's the same story, the weakening yen in Japan, and then also the awaiting of the interest rate decision in the US, and then that's going to affect how Asian traders are actually going to be trading. So, and then if you come into mainland, that's both in Shanghai and also in Hong Kong. What we are seeing there is a bit of some rebound in terms of you know, that tech sector and that electronic vehicle sector. So China is actually still trying to hold ground there amidst the fact that we are seeing a bit of a decline in terms of the volumes of sales that are coming out there in the manufacturing data. But it's actually just from the uptake of the positive news that are most likely to come from the US, signaling that we've already seen a 10%, a 0.1% basis point cut in the interest rates in China, and we should expect another one relatively soon after the US.
Wow, okay. Coming home on what I would love to call the local front, even though it is happening at a slower pace. One wonders, because we are seeing an uptick from the JSE All Share Index.
Yeah.
I suppose the question becomes, what should we expect, or rather, should we expect this momentum to hold?
We should actually expect that momentum to gain a bit of steam, depending on the news that are going to come out in the US, and also in terms of the magnitude of the cut in the interest rates coming up next week, because purely that's what markets are trying to brace themselves for. Everyone is trying to figure out the magnitude by how much we are going to see this cut in the interest rate. We should expect markets to really just rally back to the 82, 83 after next week, and that's something we should expect to be maintained if we get enough of a jump start in terms of interest rate cuts. You know, just bringing life back into Main Street, and then Wall Street is also going to rally on that.
Okay. Yeah. Commodities, just a quick one. Gold rising, Brent crude dipping today. What's the bigger picture there when it comes to commodities right now, and how are these movements connected to the broader market trends?
So what we are seeing in terms of gold, we're seeing it losing a bit of steam, purely because what we are seeing in the US is there is that trade-off between gold and the dollar. You know, the dollar is becoming a bit stronger these days as we anticipate interest rate cuts to come in next week. So we are going to see that portfolio realignment from your bonds well into equities. So now that has actually tended to increase the price or the demand for currency. So that's why we are seeing gold, you know, still on above the 2,500 mark, but losing a bit of steam. It's slowing down. The rate at which it is growing is now slowing down. We should expect it to start climbing down after the 18th. And then when you're looking at Brent crude, what we are seeing there is, you know, it's still slowing down purely because even though we have supply side shocks, the demand dynamics across the globe, we know China is already in that deflationary period. We are waiting to see if the US is actually going to come out of this. You know, if we are not seeing a weak economy, we are not going to be going into a weaker economy.
Yeah.
So there are those demand issues, and that's why the futures market for oil are actually really on the downward spiral until next week.
Okay, a quick one on the currencies today. You know, we've seen stability in the SZL against the US dollar, and rather, let's just say major currencies. What does this mean for local businesses and investors?
So relatively, you know, for an exporting nation, you find that this newer policy, this newer exchange rate position tends to benefit us, because that makes our commodities relatively cheaper. Now, for an importing nation, we are relatively paying less now for imported commodities, but you know, our exports are becoming a bit more expensive, and we should expect to see this trend hold, you know, for the next, I think for me, up until the elections in the US, and then when the first 100 days for the GNU in South Africa comes to an end, because that's when we should expect to see a clearer policy direction in terms of what the GNU is going to do.
Hopefully, with all the business engagements that have fared at the trade fair, no pun intended, with the global investors coming into Eswatini and our local investors, they managed to make some good deals. Then they can leverage this current climate of the market. Sanele, I'm really also interested in, you know, I know that we don't have time, but like you've been referencing a lot of, you know, what is happening in the US and how, you know, it reflects on our economies. We saw the Apple iPhone 16, you know, come out, and it's ridiculously expensive. It's starting at, this is in rands, in America 17,000 rands, and when you come to South Africa it's going to cost you 45,000. And indeed, when America sneezes, the whole world catches the cold. Thank you so much for your insights on the program today, and thank you so much to our viewers for staying with us. You have been kind to stay with us today. Enjoy other programs by Eswatini TV. Bye-bye.